Coming up now on your spoiler-free wrestling news update, why did Bryan Danielson decide to sign with AEW instead of WWE? WWE has signed another gold medalist, and what does CM Punk have to say about WWE reaching out to him about a possible return last year? All that and more on your spoiler-free wrestling news rundown. This is just a reminder that we omit any news or information which could potentially spoil the results, angles, storylines, or surprise debuts taking place in professional wrestling. If you appreciate this type of wrestling coverage, please consider subscribing, clicking the notifications bell, and sharing this video with friends. This weekend, All Elite Wrestling presented easily its most important and most impactful pay-per-view show in the promotion's 3-year history. So many newsworthy things happened on this show. From Minoru Suzuki coming out to confront Jon Moxley, to Ruby Soho debuting in the Casino Battle Royale, to Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson debuting in the final segment of the show. Tony Khan took to Twitter afterwards to thank everyone who either attended or purchased the pay-per-view. His tweet's up on your screen now. He wrote, "Thank you to everyone who's ordered AEW All Out and made it the most watched AEW pay-per-view ever. Thank you everyone who attended the show. If you haven't seen it, please consider ordering the pay-per-view. It's ignited the passion of wrestling fans worldwide. Thank you all for making it possible." Now, buy rates for the show are not currently available and won't be for some time, but Tony Khan is stating that things are trending for it to be the most watched pay-per-view in AEW history. Bryan Danielson debuted for AEW in the closing moments of All Out. He spoke with the media following the event and answered questions regarding why he decided to sign with AEW rather than re-signing with WWE. One of the reasons that Danielson gave echoed sentiment that CM Punk has expressed in recent weeks regarding why he decided to sign with AEW. Both Danielson and Punk have mentioned the Brody Lee tribute show and how the promotion handled Brody Lee's passing as reasons for why they were interested in getting involved in the company. Danielson said, and the quote is up on your screen now, that there was something about the Brody Lee show that he saw it and saw how special it was, and that started getting him thinking about possibly going to AEW. He would also continue to say that while he has a great relationship with WWE and even mentioned that he loves Vince McMahon, he also said that Vince McMahon is sometimes overprotective of him and that he wants to be able to push his limits and that he will have the opportunity to do that in a safe manner in AEW. And finally, during the post-event media scrum, Danielson mentioned the excitement surrounding AEW as a key reason for why he decided to sign with the company. Finally, Danielson concluded that it was a very difficult decision for him to decide to leave WWE and sign with AEW, and he also noted that while there are many people there that he considers family, he does have legitimate family in the company, including his wife Brie Bella and father-in-law John Laurinaitis. Here's what Danielson had to say. "I really battled back and forth because there's a lot of people there that I consider family, that actually are legitimately my family, and you know, people that I love there, so it was a really tough decision." In contrast to what Bryan Danielson said about his decision to leave WWE and sign with AEW, Adam Cole said his decision to do the same thing was a fairly easy one. Here is what Cole had to say at the post-event press conference. "When you think about where I was, that technically was my dream since I was 9 years old. And then I'd seen everything that AEW was doing. I'd been here countless times to support Bret and hang out with the crew, and it's just the best group." He continued, "I'd really built a reputation for myself there as well, but I knew in my heart pretty early on that I wanted to come here, and it's no knock whatsoever on them. I had a very excellent 4-year experience, but I wanted to come back and work with a crew that I love being around 24/7, a crew that is just as passionate about pro wrestling as I am, and fans that feel the exact same way as we do. So making the decision was a fairly easy one." Also during the post-event media scrum, Adam Cole noted that he was actually surprised to learn that his WWE contract was up when it was. If you remember in previous videos, we've talked about how WWE was caught unaware that Adam Cole's contract was actually expiring this summer. That then led to Adam Cole signing a short 1-month extension for him to continue his rivalry with Kyle O'Reilly. Of course, we'll also bring up in the fall of 2019, there were countless stories all across the internet that Adam Cole had actually signed with WWE until 2024, but alas, it turns out all of those reports were incorrect. But Cole noted in the post-show media scrum, Cole said, "Yeah, so funny enough, believe it or not, I was also surprised. Yeah, I was under the impression that it was like 6 months later, so it was a surprise to me, it was a surprise to them. It was public knowledge for a lot of people that I had signed a little extension. I was in the middle of a really serious angle with Kyle O'Reilly, which was very important to me. He's one of my best friends in the entire world. Then after that is when stuff kind of opened up for me, but very surprising to me. It was just as surprising to me." Ruby Soho, the former Ruby Riott in WWE, was the big surprise entrant in the Casino Battle Royale. She would even go on to win the match itself, and she'll now face Britt Baker for the AEW Women's World title at a later date. She also spoke with media at the post-event media scrum. Soho mentioned she was very emotional hearing fans chant her name before she came out, and she also referred to All Out as the pinnacle of her wrestling career. Now, she is, of course, named Ruby Soho. Her entrance music is Rancid's song, Ruby Soho, and she spoke about the significance of her new name and ring music and how she ended up with it. Here is what she had to say. "I have been a fan of Rancid for a very, very long time. Coincidentally enough, I don't know if you guys know this, but a lot of Punk fans are big wrestling fans. And Lars Fredrickson from Rancid and I had become friends over the last couple of years. I had kind of come upon a time where I was like, okay, I need to know what I'm going to be called, what my music is going to be, and he suggested and bestowed upon me Ruby Soho and the music. Well, Ruby Soho will make her first appearance on AEW Dynamite this Wednesday from Cincinnati. Many fans have pointed out that the match between CM Punk and Darby Allin at All Out contained a bit of an homage to a match between Bret Hart and the 1-2-3 Kid that took place in the summer of 1994. There are videos up on Instagram of 5 different moments in the Punk versus Darby Allin match that were homages or recreations of spots that took place in that match between Bret Hart and Sean Waltman some 27 years ago. Sean Waltman actually posted to Twitter in response to this. He just posted a little image of Bruce Lee bowing, and then he wrote, "I'm honored to have taken part in something that still has influence a quarter of a century later." Bryan Danielson entered the arena at All Out to the sounds of a modified version of Flight of the Valkyries. Now, some fans had been hoping that perhaps Danielson would go back to using The Final Countdown as his ring music, but evidently when attempts were made to purchase the rights to use that song, what the band wanted, or the amount the band wanted, was cost prohibitive. This was covered recently by Dave Meltzer on the Wrestling Observer Radio. Here's what he had to say. Meltzer said, "There was, in fact, an attempt to have him come out to the final countdown, figuring the place would explode, which they did anyway. But it was, even for Tony Khan, it was cost prohibitive, so that's why that didn't play. One of Danielson's friends made the new remix, and they think in time, this song will be just fine." Also concerning Bryan Danielson, he noted during the post-event media scrum that he likely will not be using the yes chant during his time in AEW, and he owes this to wanting to respect WWE's intellectual property rights. He said, "I don't know, we're going to have to talk about what I can do and what I cannot do. One of the things that I do try to respect, because like I said, I appreciate the people I worked for before and respecting their intellectual property and that sort of thing. And so try and making sure that I don't contradict any of that. And the fans doing it is great, but I'm not sure if I'm going to do it. WWE has reportedly signed another gold medal winner, Gable Steveson, who won the gold medal in the Tokyo Olympics this summer and is also an NCAA heavyweight wrestling champion. He tweeted that he just put pen to paper. It's been no secret that several places have been recruiting Steveson, including multiple NFL teams and the UFC. But according to Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, it is WWE who has landed Steveson. Steveson's older brother Bobby is already training at the Performance Center, and it looks like he will be joined by Gable shortly. CM Punk spoke with ESPN's Mark Raimondi for an interview recently and mentioned that WWE had reached out to him back in December about a possible return to the company. Punk doesn't sound like he took their overtures very seriously, however. Here is what he said. He said, "I remember one of the first things I ever said to them was, above all, don't play games." And they played games. Some things never change. When you enter a conversation with people you have a past with, and you know who they are, how seriously can you take it? I know exactly who they are, and they just continue to prove it. I'm trying to be as diplomatic as I possibly can. So it doesn't sound like Punk was overly interested in WWE reaching out to him back late last year. After last night's edition of WWE Raw from Miami, we now have 4 confirmed matches for the Extreme Rules pay-per-view on September 26th from Columbus. Here are the matches that are now confirmed. So after an interesting interaction on Raw last night, Alexa Bliss will now challenge Charlotte Flair for the Raw Championship at Extreme Rules. Alexa Bliss's hometown is Columbus, so she will possibly have the hometown advantage in this match. Also confirmed, we have Bobby Lashley will defend the WWE Championship against Randy Orton. Damian Priest will defend the United States Championship against Sheamus. And already scheduled for the event was Becky Lynch defending the SmackDown title against Bianca Belair. And the last thing that we're going to cover in this video is the lineup for tonight's edition of WWE NXT. Now, this is the last edition of the show before the new NXT debuts on next week's show with a new look, logo, and setup in the Performance Center. 5 matches are scheduled for tonight's show, including the NXT Tag Team Championships are on the line when MSK defends against Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch. The Diamond Mine are scheduled to take on 2 opponents to be announced later. Ember Moon will face Kaylee Ray in singles competition. Santos Escobar will go one-on-one with Carmelo Hayes. And for the NXT Women's Tag Team Championships, Io Shirai and Zoe Stark will defend against Casey Catanzaro and Kaden Carter. And with that, you are completely up to date with everything making headlines in the world of professional wrestling, minus anything which could potentially spoil future storylines, angles, match results, or surprise debuts for you. I'm your host, Gentleman Ian, for Spoiler Free Wrestling.